Welcome. My name is William Kuskin, and I welcome you to Tech Friday on August 14th. We're in the final throes, the countdown, the shoot towards the opening of the semester. So I have with us today Dave Benson, who is the Applications Administrator and Video Collaboration Service Manager for the Office of Information Technology. Dave did a great short discussion of Zoom capabilities last Friday, and I invited him back this Friday to give us a more extended discovery of Zoom. What I'd like to do today is get Dave going on scheduling Zoom, and then move him into a discussion of security and some of the features within Zoom, particularly the breakouts and the polls. My goal is to end with a discussion of exactly how Zoom can be used as a synchronous recording instrument that can produce asynchronous videos for later consumption. So I want to thank Dave, really. Thank you for giving of your time. We are really in now the hurdle of getting to the semester. However, I think Zoom has proven an incredibly useful tool, and I think it will continue to prove a valuable, indeed essential tool as we move into the semester and whatever hurdles lie ahead of us. So I'm going to pipe down, and I'm going to let Dave take us into Zoom. Thank you so much.
Great, William. Thanks very much for the introduction. I don't really think I need to reintroduce myself. We got a couple of folks here on the call. I would like to, we're going to go over the agenda that William discussed, but the others here on the call, please stop me when I'm mid-screen share, ask any questions that might be pertinent to this recording. But without further ado, yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll start with scheduling within Zoom. So, alrighty. Cool. So a lot of you guys may be familiar here. This is what scheduling looks like. And we're going to go ahead and focus on a recurring session. So pretend that I'm an instructor and I will be scheduling a Zoom meeting for the duration of a semester, and say this will be a recurring session that will come back on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it will happen weekly, Tuesdays and Thursdays for the duration of the semester. So I'll call this test session 101. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and disregard the start and duration times here. What we're going to do is focus on recurring meeting. That's all you need to do. It's going to ensure that the meeting link stays valid for whenever you need it. It'll give you a prompt here to remember to check recurrence or repeat in your calendar invitation. Zoom is not doing the back-end work of scheduling. It's just when you tell it to do a recurring meeting, like I said, it just keeps a static link, and you will kind of disseminate that information via calendar. So we'll go into that later. The meeting ID is I always recommend using generate automatically. We don't want to use our personal meeting ID for class sessions for various reasons. So just always generate an automatically generated ID. Security, it's up to you. We definitely recommend utilizing at least one or the other. Soon, one of these options is going to be enforced for all meetings. The passcode will just, you can choose a passcode. This will ensure that people have to type in the password when they join the meeting. You're going to send that information out however you do, whether that's an email to your roster or to your course roster, or posting it in Canvas somewhere. But definitely don't post this anywhere publicly. I prefer the waiting room. Waiting room will, when that's enabled, allow students to join, but you will have to manually let them in. So you'll get a prompt every time somebody tries to join the meeting. This will prevent people from even getting into the meeting without you specifically knowing who they are. We'll go ahead and choose waiting room just for this purpose. Video, this just determines, whether your video is on by default and the participant's video is on by default. You can change that dynamically in the setting or in the meeting itself. This is just how it comes on when you come on board right off the bat. Leave the audio to the default setting, which is telephone and computer audio, unless you don't want people to be able to dial in from their phone. I like to have it as a backup in case there are computer audio issues. So this will generate a phone number for people to dial in case something happens. The calendar is whatever you use. So if you use Outlook, great. If you use Google, great. If you don't use any specific calendar, just choose other calendars. I'm going to go ahead and use the Outlook calendar because that's what I utilize. Join before host will allow people to, students to join the meeting before you've even started it. So say somebody shows up 10 minutes early and you haven't started the meeting yet, they'll be able to kind of get in and mingle together unless you have the waiting room enabled. If you have the waiting room enabled and you have not joined, they're going to jump directly into the waiting room. And then when you come into the meeting, then you will allow them to come on. So it's up to you. Mute participants upon entry, pretty straightforward. It's up to you. Authenticated users can join. This is the big one. So if you don't want to have a waiting room or a passcode set up off the bat, that's fine. If this is a class that you are only going to have people from the CU Boulder domain join, then you can choose the authenticated users, only authenticated users can join CU Boulder. You can see the domains that will allow. So anybody that has a Zoom account with say it's David, or it's my identity at cs.colorado.edu, at colorado.edu, or at lasp.colorado.edu. Only people that join when they're signed in with their account, with their identity, with one of these domains will be able to join. Definitely recommend this for classes if at all possible. If you're not going to do authentication, you want to leave that off, make sure you choose a waiting room or a passcode. It's just best practice. You can choose both if you'd like. And then the last but not least is, or second to last is automatically record. You can choose to do it locally or into the cloud. We're not going to cover recording in this case, but you can choose that if you'd like. And last but not least, if you have a TA or something that you would like to be the alternative host, somebody that can also start the meeting on your behalf and also have some elevated privileges, you can specify them here. You can do a quick search for, I got my colleague here. As long as they've signed into their account, it will populate automatically here, and you can search by their name. Before, you had to specify, as you see, these are identity keys. You had to specify that, and you couldn't search, so you had to know that ahead of time. But now you can just search their friendly name, and they'll show up. So that's that. Go ahead.
Let me ask a question here.
Sure.
Undergraduate behavior. Is your sense that undergraduates are utilizing Zoom through CU Boulder and not through not through their own accounts? And is your sense that if they use their own email, is that recognized as their identity?
Great, excellent question. So yes, the answer is yes. We have a lot of users. I don't know, if 100% of students are using Zoom with their Zoom accounts, but they should, because they get all the benefits of a pro paid license, including unlimited meeting minutes, et cetera, et cetera. But that definitely is a great point. If you're not confident, and maybe you don't tell the students, hey, in order to be able to join my meeting, you're going to need to log in with your CU Boulder account. You may tell them that information ahead of time, which will kind of prevent problems in the future and kind of forcing this authentication. The other benefit of having students sign in with their CU Boulder Zoom account is you can run usage reports and attendance reports. If somebody comes through anonymously through the web browser, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's a great feature.
Absolutely. And I can touch on that if we have a few minutes at the end. But if somebody were to come through the web browser just anonymously, or through their personal account, which would be some random email address at gmail.com, when you run those attendance reports or usage reports, you may not know that was your student. So by saying, hey, log in with your CU Boulder Zoom account, this is going to ensure that I get the appropriate attendance. There's a lot of benefits to it. So it's up to you, but just note that if you do use authentication and they're at CU Boulder, they're not going to be able to sign in unless they're signed into their Zoom account. So all the more reason to use it.
So Dave, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm going to be teaching 3 classes and 2 of them are going to be for international students. Like,
Okay.
not even, I was going to say, you know, just arrived, and for all I know, some of them might be actually back home. So
Sure.
can you give me in the simplest terms the directions that they need? I will say to them, sign in with your CU account. CU.
Absolutely. Let me, I'm going to drop in the chat here. I'd like to put this in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here shortly, because I think this is really important. Here we go. And share out. Basically what they need to do is sign in via SSO. So I've dropped in the chat a link to the OIT Zoom page. If you scroll down to the middle, there's a Get Started section. So you download the Zoom application, you sign in with SSO, just like you would any other resource on the Zoom or general applications, etc. You put in your identity key, you choose CU Boulder, and then once they've logged in with SSO through the desktop application, they're automatically provisioned a Zoom Pro account, and they'll be able to kind of continue on.
Okay.
So take a look at, it's just basically download the application and sign in with SSO and choose CU Boulder.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Cool.
That is great. There's a 5-step, I'm just reiterating this for all our home viewers.
Sure.
Which is everybody, because everybody's at home. There is a very nice, if you scroll down, Get Started feature on that webpage that Dave put in chat, and it has 5 steps that looks pretty easy. So please take a look.
Perfect. And just so everybody can get a brief, you know, when you click that link, here's what it is. There it is. So yeah, we will go ahead and move back on to continue our scheduling portion here. And we're gonna have to redo it. We'll call this test. And we were at the very bottom where you were choosing an alternative host if you need. Are you guys seeing my screen right now?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Perfect, great.
Picture of a tent. And
Got
then
it.
over to the rock climbing picture. You're a very active young man.
That's not me, but thank you, thank you. So yeah, it's all here. And remember, I'm using a calendar, and we've chosen a recurring meeting. So this will, you know, last the duration of the semester. Once we hit schedule, it's going to populate all this information into the calendar that we chose. And this is where you specify it's a recurring meeting. So when we choose recurring in Zoom, it just, like I said, it ensures that this link stays valid for at least a year. And there's other variables involved as well. But it will just ensure that link is active. You don't have to use Outlook or Google Calendar to determine that. If you are sending the Zoom link out to all Outlook calendar users, great. You can specify, you know, you can make it recurring, and you specify the recurrence pattern here. However, let me go back here. We will schedule another new meeting. We'll choose recurring, but say I'm not going to send this out via Outlook to my students. I'm going to send it out, and I'm not going to use Google. I'm going to use it. I'm going to send it. I'm going to put it in Canvas. This just populates a clipboard of the information, and then you can send that out whichever way you want.
You could put that in an email.
Absolutely, and just straight in the email and say, hey, this is going to be the exact same meeting link every single time. The important part is that you just choose a recurring meeting in Zoom. That makes sense?
It does make sense.
And I had a question about that too. Can you
Sure.
change those settings in midstream?
What do you mean?
If I decided, for example, suppose I put up some heavy duty security at the beginning, and then halfway through the semester I realized I don't have to worry about that. It's a class of 5 people. Can I change some of those settings?
Test security. Cool. We got a recurring meeting. Let me show you how to do that. Great. So we've scheduled our meeting. In order to get to edit existing meetings, we're going to need to log in over at cuboulder.zoom.us.
Okay.
You're going to log in with your identity key. I'm using my test account here. I'm going to sign in here. And this is where you can see a landing of all of your meetings. So I've got a couple here. We just called this one test security. So I'm going to click on the topic link for that. And I can edit this meeting here.
Perfect.
Yep. And you can change if you want. You said, oh, shoot, I forgot to enable a waiting room. You can do that. Or shoot, I want it to be only authenticated users can join at this time. You can do that. So yes, absolutely. And that's a great question.
Great, thanks.
Sure. Okay, I think that covers everything for scheduling. Unless there's any other specific questions, we will jump over to security, which we've already kind of touched on, and it was closely intertwined with the scheduling portion. As I discussed, these are the scheduling-based security options. So we've got the passcode, you've got the waiting room, and you've got authentication. Let's go ahead and jump into a meeting, a mock meeting here, and we're going to talk about security within a meeting. Front and center now, Zoom has the security tab. So in addition to being able to edit in the web UI in the interface, we can also dynamically change settings within a meeting. This will not apply to the schedule or anything like that. But if you're in a meeting and you realize that you have somebody in there that shouldn't be in there, you can change all these settings here. You've got lock meeting. If you lock it down right now, that'll prevent anybody else from randomly joining. Say somebody is posting your class link over in Reddit, and you keep getting people out. Well, you can kick those people out, and then you can lock the meeting, and they'll never be able to get back in again. So you don't have to worry about that. You can enable it. You can disable it. Additionally, say you have the same situation where people are joining that shouldn't be joining, but you also have some stragglers that are late to the class. You can dynamically enable the waiting room, and that'll effectively lock the meeting, but also allow you to get a notification that, hey, so-and-so is trying to join. And if you know that someone is late and you're expecting them, you can let them in without letting the others in. And here we've got allow the participants to share the screen, to chat, to rename themselves, to unmute themselves. All dynamic options, you can change them to and from which way you want. And it's a great way to mitigate any sort of issues that might be coming through in chat, or if people are trying to share their screen with inappropriate things.
Dave, are these fairly new?
The security section was introduced in a release shortly after the pandemic happened. So Zoom was primarily used as an enterprise tool where the network and firewall and ports and all those good things were heavily mitigated. But as the growth expanded exponentially and moved to education, and we started seeing Zoom started seeing situations where people were posting their links publicly and things like that, they introduced the security tab. So I would say it's been around since about April, maybe even March.
Well, it's great. It's great.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Everybody should have this option now. If you don't, update your desktop client, your Zoom application, but everybody should have this security section by now. So yep, those are the settings. I will go over here to the participants pane and kind of show you there's one other option here too, and you can enable some of the settings here, but they made it, and these options were always available, but they just gave it an extra security tab there for quick reference.
So I wanted to jump in here and say that when we ran the What's Your Plan symposium, I focused myself a little bit on security, and having this participant window open on the side and muting everyone. For instance, I'm going to mute for Madeline right now.
Sure.
Muting everyone and watching for that is a very effective mode, because all sorts of things happen. The dog starts barking or someone starts talking, and it's nice to be alert to that. It gives the person, the host, greater control. And I don't think you need to mute video, but it's another thing one might want to consider, because how does Zoom bombing occur? It occurs through audio or video. So if I were to to go through and kind of rigorously control everyone's use of video or audio, it does give me a sense of security and control over the meeting.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And just to note, if you need to quickly mute everyone, like William was saying, you go to the bottom right corner of the participants pane, you click mute all, it'll mute everybody. And here, again, there's yet another section where you can choose to allow people to unmute themselves. If you don't want anybody talking, you can select or deselect that. But yeah, that's a great level of control. And I think that is, in a nutshell, security. We'll move on to breakout rooms and polling since we're trying to keep this nice and tight here. I'm going to briefly touch on both. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to polling because it's going to take a little bit more time. So if you remember, we created a meeting. Well, actually, let me back up. First and foremost, we need to make sure that polling is enabled. So if you navigate back to cboulders.zoom.us, take a look at your settings. I'm just going to do a quick Control F. Polling is enabled by default. For some reason, if you don't see the polling feature, just remember you need to take a look in the settings to make sure that the switch is on. It is by default, so you should be good to go. Polling is managed best managed at the meeting level, or the scheduling level. So we call this one test security. If you go down here at the bottom, you'll see that you have not yet created a poll. Let's go ahead and add a poll. Have you used polling? Actually, this is the title of the poll. Polling test 1. And we will go here. Have you used polling? You do single choice. Yes. No. You can also choose multiple choice. There can be multiple options. So we'll go ahead and just choose single choice here. You can see here, you can also run, in addition to usage reports, you can run poll reports to gather information from students directly to see how they responded and what their, a participation report, if you will. If you want to leave this anonymous, when you run a poll report, it will just have anonymous responses. So up to you, but poll reports can definitely be helpful.
So I have a question there. Is that obvious to the students when I make it anonymous? Because I'm planning to use this for a mid-semester course evaluation for them to.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'm thinking the answer is yes. They will say your response will be anonymous. I could be wrong though, and I definitely do need to test that further. But I encourage you also to kind of give it a shot. But we can try that now. Let's pause real quick. I'm going to come back here and come back. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. Yeah, I haven't created a poll ahead of time. Scratch that. I can't test it dynamically, so I'll have to test it and report back later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, question 2. Where that came from. Cool. Sure. These are arbitrary. Cool. We'll go ahead and save that. And now, if you scroll to the bottom, you can see you have one poll. Want to add another poll? Poll 2. Another question.
I just fired off the stock poll. Have you used clickers? I think the 2 participants said no, which is fine.
Absolutely. I saw that pop up and I was wondering where that came from, but that was you. Understood. Got it. Perfect. So now we've got 2 polls set up. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to start the meeting that we've scheduled out. This is our recurring meeting. We called it Test Security. It's a security class. We're going to go ahead and start it. And at the bottom here, you'll see you'll see polls. So we can go ahead and choose which poll we want to distribute. There we go. So this is where you change between the 2. We'll go ahead and launch the poll. You will see information exactly. Thank you, William. William's putting out another poll here. So I'm going to go ahead and respond to it as if I were an end user. I'll submit it. And in this case, you can't see live because we're just in a test meeting and you can't see any of the responses, but you'll get information back in real time. At the end of this, we'll end the poll and we can share the results. William, I don't know if you end that poll, maybe you can go ahead and share that so we can see what it looks like.
I'll end result. I'm sharing results.
Yep. So you share the results. You can share out those results with students in real time.
Teachers, and one is prepared, one's not. There we go.
Great. That's polling in a nutshell. We will move on now to breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, you go ahead and click it. You have the option to assign. Here, we don't have any participants in it because it's a test meeting, but it would tell you if I had 10 people in here, I'd say assign 10 participants into a predefined number of rooms. We'll call it 5. You can do it automatically or manually. We'll do automatically. As you can see here, it will create all the rooms. Since I don't have any participants in this, you won't see their names, but you will see who is assigned where here. You can also assign people to it manually after you've done the automatic assignment. We will go ahead and choose the options before we open up the breakout rooms. You have the option to move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. You have the option to allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So if you want people to stay in their group sessions and you don't want them to come back until you end the breakout rooms, go ahead and disable that. This is where you specify the automatic closure of the breakout rooms after a certain set of time, or a certain predefined time frame. And then this countdown timer, you can enable it or disable it. If you were to just close it out and just bring back everybody automatically, and you don't want a timer, that's fine. Otherwise, give everybody a 10-second warning that they're coming back to the main session. You go ahead and close that out. And this is not available right now because there's nobody actually in my meeting. But if it were, I would just go ahead and open it up. It'll send everybody out, and then you as a host would remain in the main session. Go ahead, please.
What's great about this, Dave, is on the one hand, someone running a meeting could essentially do it on the fly. I mean, I put together that little poll on the fly. On the other hand, and you could just hit breakout rooms. I'm very tempted to thrust you each into your own breakout room.
Sure.
So you could have a kind of waiting for Godot experience there. But I'm going to avoid that existential crisis and leave you all in the main group. But with a little planning in advance, one could start their Zoom a little early, make the polls and the breakout rooms, think about it, and set it up so when the students arrive, you would have your poll. I'm not sure that the participants here can see it, but it simply opens a separate window and you can have all your polls lined up. And then once you hit polling, you can select and fire off the individual polls. All this is to say, with a little planning, this could be a very seamless process of polling the students and getting their feedback, sharing their feedback, but also moving them into separate discussion groups if that was what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. It's a great point. And on that note, now that we've covered the in-meeting breakout rooms, I will briefly touch on the feature that will allow you to pre-assign participants to breakout rooms. So as William was saying, if a little preparation, you know that you have a roster of people that are students that are coming in and you want to assign them ahead of time. We're going to do a Control F and search for breakout rooms. This isn't, breakout rooms are enabled by default, but this is not. This is the allow host to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. So say that you have, like I said, you have a roster of students, you want them to go into the same groups for a specified class or for a specified schedule. We can enable that setting. We're going to have to go back over to our meetings tab. I'm going to schedule a new meeting here, test 3, and we'll call it recurring. And you can specify here in the web UI, this is just to give people an idea of when it is. But again, the same idea applies. We just want to choose recurrence. I'm going to go here to go and choose breakout room pre-assign. You have 2 options to do it. Breakout room pre-assignment can be done here, You can change the name. You can add participants. If you're using the web UI to pre-assign people in a breakout room, they must have signed into their Zoom account before with the SSO process that we discussed before. If not, the web interface will not be smart enough to know that they have never signed into their account before. So how does it know that they're there? So this relies on knowing that people have actually done that. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Additionally, you have the alternative option of importing from a CSV. This is for participants that say, this is not necessarily good for a class example, but for people that might not be within the CU Boulder domain or may have not used it, and you know that they're going to be coming from a personal email address, you can upload via CSV. So it gives you a sample right off the bat. You add as many rooms as you want. This is the template. And this is where you give it the email address and you would save it. That's it. It's the same exact concept as what we just did. You would drag and drop it there, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. In this case, we've already pre-assigned, we've done it through the web UI. I'm going to save this one, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to start this meeting, this test 3 meeting. Let me get out of this one here. I just want to give you an idea of what it looks like. Here's our test 3. We'll start this one. And if you go to the breakout rooms, you click it. I only assigned one participant, or I only created one breakout room in that pre-assignment. And my account is not here, of course, because I'm hosting this Zoom session here. But if I were in the meeting, it would be here. I could just click open all rooms. That's it. That's pre-assignment. I think that we're kind of wrapping up on time here, and we're gonna move out of this and come back to an overall discussion. So let me stop my share. And kind of some thoughts. William asked me to touch a little bit on thoughts about synchronous, the use of synchronous recordings, and also the asynchronous distribution of Zoom recordings. So Zoom, of course, is going to be the recommended option to facilitate synchronous sessions, right? So you have the option of recording either locally or recording to the cloud. I highly encourage cloud recording. There's a lot of different benefits, and maybe I should probably share out and we can touch base a little bit on those. But we have other options as well of being able to do asynchronous sessions. So for example, you guys might remember Nick Steinkamp coming last Friday and touching about personal capture. That's a screen recording session. There is no synchronous component to that. If you're going to have a hybrid course where there has to be remote participants, you're going to use Zoom, right? Because you can't be doing personal capture and Zoom at the same time. So for a synchronous session, I recommend using the cloud recording. You get added features. I won't delve too much into those, but use the cloud recording option. If we move on and speak of Nick Steinkamp, he just joined in. Disseminating that or getting that information out to students, it can be done in a lot of different ways. Nick is going to host another session on personal capture again, and one of the options within the media site the personal capture is to be able to upload recordings that are not done necessarily within personal capture or the My Media Site or Media Site desktop recorder, excuse me. And you can upload your Zoom recordings directly into that and then post a single link to a channel of all of the Zoom recordings that you've done synchronously in real time, and people can come back to do that. If you're using local recording, if you're using Zoom local recordings, it'll save an MP4 directly to your desktop, and then you can pop that into the upload function of MediaSite Desktop Recorder, and that will upload into ultimately your drafts, and then you can put that into a channel, and you can share a single channel out on like a Canvas link. Same thing with cloud recordings is a little bit different. Your recordings are going to land in the web interface, but you can still download an MP4 of that video and then upload it to a channel. The benefit of doing it and uploading it to something like My Media or MediaSite Desktop Recorder, to My Media Site, would be that you have a single channel link. If you are recording all of your synchronous sessions in Zoom, traditionally you would have to share out a link. So if you have 2 sessions per week, you're sharing out 2 discrete cloud recording links. So having everything in a single location is really great, and my media site is in personal capture is a really great option to do that.
So Dave, I'm sorry to be slow and dense.
No, please.
It's always hard. I'm recording this. When I finish, it downloads it onto my desktop, but then I'm faced with uploading it elsewhere to share it.
Absolutely.
If I had chosen cloud recording, that ends up where?
Let's take I think so we have a couple of minutes. I'm going to share back out and we'll discuss that. So here, again, cuboulder.zoom.us, where we manage all of our profile, our meeting settings, everything that we've been discussing here. This is where it's going to land when you do cloud recordings. You'll also get an email out, and you'll get an email when the cloud recording has finished processing. But this is where it's going to land. Excuse me, the recording tab. As you see here, you would navigate to the one that you want, and this is where you can share out. As the host, you have an option to download it. So if we're talking about my media site and uploading these into a channel, we would want to download the MP4. It's going to go here, and then you can download it locally to your machine, and you can send it wherever you'd like.
So to get it onto the My Media Site channel, which is going to help us with on Monday, we would have to download it and re-upload it.
Correct. That's correct. If you're using cloud recording.
Right. So in a sense, the local download that I'm using isn't the worst strategy if I want to put it up in a channel later. And the bonus of a channel, just to be clear, is that it gives me one site that I can invite all my students to and have the entire catalog of videos up there.
Absolutely, 100%. A static link that you can post to Canvas that say, for those that were not able to attend the Zoom session synchronously or need to just go back and watch the videos ahead of time, please navigate to this static link. All recordings will end up there. You got it.
So this has been fascinating and incredibly useful. I'm taking one main point and then some smaller points from it. And the one main point is that many of us simply engage with Zoom through the addresses provided and the addresses we create and we send out. And that's worked really wonderfully. I mean, let's face it, this entire experience has been eased and made possible through Zoom. So it's wonderful. However, Dave, what you've alerted me to is the power of the Zoom web conferencing website that we are all members of through our subscription through the university. The power of that is that it gives us an control over our Zoom experience. So we can set up polls in advance. We can schedule things and control the security levels. We can also set up the breakout rooms in advance. But we also have to ask our students to utilize their own login into that. So the larger picture here is to move from simply a user of instances of Zoom to a controller of Zoom. We need to visit that site and figure out how we want to set up our own settings. But doing that allows us, metaphorically, to prepare our classroom more successfully. That's what I'm really taking from this.
You got it, 100%. And certainly just on the point of students using their, CU Boulder granted pro license, you get all the pro benefits, and the usage report is really a big one. So a lot of instructors ask, how do I get attendance? So some people might just go look at the chat window or the participants pane and take note of that. But if you encourage people at the beginning or the initial session, hey, log in with SSO, claim your pro license, your pro Zoom license, and come in that way. And it's good to do, and you can run those usage reports and get accurate information from that. The added benefit is domain-based authentication. So, effectively locking everybody out, making sure you're only going to have students from this roster join this session for the entirety of the semester. You don't have to worry about effectively managing any other way. And also, you can run more granular reports to find out if you have a student that maybe is changing their name, but you have that domain-based authentication set up. You can see who they came through as, yeah.
Before we wrap up, Madeline, Leland, do you have questions, thoughts, reflections?
I was curious about sort of host monitoring of the breakout rooms, if that's possible, how that would work.
Great question. So as the host, and only the host, you will be able to freely move between any of the breakout rooms. So once everybody's gone out to their respective sessions, you'll be left in the main session. You'll see the dialogue that has all of your breakout rooms listed, and you'll have the option to join any one of those freely. Additionally, you can be asked by students for help. So if somebody's in a breakout room, if William were to put us in a breakout room session here, we'd have a little help button on the bottom meeting control bar, and we request for help. It summons them. You can join in, but you do have the option to join freely.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick.
Additionally, with the breakout rooms, the host can shoot out a global message to all the breakout rooms at once, kind of saying, hey, we're wrapping up in 5 minutes, that sort of thing.
Yep. Single broadcast message out to all users in breakout rooms. You got it.
What happens if the lecture is being recorded and you start breakout rooms?
Great question. So if you're recording the main session, you're not going to record individual breakout rooms.
Okay.
So you will not get anything from that. You can designate recording privileges to like a TA or somebody else if you have a specific breakout room session that you would like recorded. So say we were in breakout rooms now, I'm the host of this meeting. I want Nick to go into breakout session 1 and record that session. Before I open the breakout rooms, I'll give Nick recording privileges. I'll click on his name, allow him to record. He can then move into the breakout room. He'll have his own recording dialogue, which will allow him to record that breakout session locally to his machine.
Excellent.
Cool.
I had a completely different question. It really goes back to sharing the screen. So if there are other questions about this, are there? Okay. I'm worried I'm going to have students who haven't used Zoom at all before, and so I'd like to get my Zoom screen on my shared on my screen, and I can't seem to do that. See what I mean? Like I can get other things on my screen, my my desktop and other documents and stuff, but I haven't been able to get my Zoom screen.
Understand. Like, so we're doing a training session right now, and you're seeing my Zoom windows.
Yeah,
that's a great option. It's a great question, I should say. So right now, for my own ease of use and without having to enable an additional setting, I am sharing I was sharing my office PC. I was remoted into my office PC. However, we don't need that at all. And let me share out one. I know we got 3 minutes left here. I'll share out my screen and show you a really great setting. So, oops, I want to go back to my remote machine. Back here in remember the good old settings tab at ceboulder.zoom.us. I'm going to do a Control F for share. See this option here called show Zoom windows during a screen share. We need to, it's disabled by default, and you will not find it in your desktop application settings. But if you go in and you enable this setting, you'll need to log out of your, let me show you what it looks like without it. So I enabled it at the user level in the web interface, right? Now I'm here, oops, I'm here in the desktop application settings, and I go over to share screen. You won't see that option available here. However, if I go ahead and sign out, now that I've made a change in the web settings, I sign back in with SSO, put in C Boulder. It's going to bring me back to my login. I've got my test account. Now I go back into the settings tab, and I go back to screen share, show Zoom windows during screen share. Now that's available. So now anytime you are sharing your screen, the students will be seeing the exact same thing that you're seeing.
Great.
Wow, great question, Leyland, and
Oh,
great
thank you.
answer. So the SSO, what does SSO stand for?
Single sign-on. It's what the university uses for cross-platform applications. So, like Canvas, for example,
Right.
you have a single sign-on for everything. So Zoom also utilizes single sign-on.
That Zoom web page control panel is very powerful. And in many ways,
100%.
it is the lesson of this video, which is by controlling your settings there, you can begin to set your classroom out the way you want it.
100%. You got it.
I have one final question, and
Sure thing.
Dave, maybe you're not the person to ask this, but some of my colleagues like to run 2 Zoom sessions when they log into a classroom. So they'll have their normal login, like I'm logged into this, but then they'll also come on their phone or on another computer. I'm
Sure.
having trouble imagining what the advantage of that is. I should speak to Chris Kohler, who does it all the time.
Sure.
Do you understand? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of an exact use case. Nick,
This could be someone helping out in the classroom, right? The instructor sets up, they're sharing their PowerPoint, they're instructing. They've got another laptop they join the meeting from to give to a student. Maybe they moderate the questions as they come through the Zoom chat because the instructor is teaching. They can't look at the chat.
yeah, and they're not necessarily signed in with their, you can't host 2 meetings at once, but again, if you're coming from another account, you can do that. Or like Nick said, you can designate a TA, say, hey, can you dial into my meeting as well, and kind of facilitate some of the questions from the remote participants. Another option is if you have 2 computers and you're in a classroom teaching a hybrid session, you could be signed in on one, your Zoom screen or one computer to kind of share that content and put everything in the room, but also sharing out with the remote participants. But additionally, you could have another screen up if you really wanted, just for all the talking heads. So you had a gallery view up on your second computer.
Right.
There's other ways around that. You can do side-by-side mode. We won't get too deep into that, but probably the most applicable setting is, like Nick says, having somebody else also dialed in to kind of help facilitate Q&A.
Well, this has been masterful and very useful. And I think people who are not here would do well to appreciate this video and watch it. And I'll disseminate it out to the college and the university. Thank you, Dave. This was great.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. Thank you.
Sure, you're very welcome.
Look forward to Monday.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks. Have a great weekend. And I wish you well and good luck getting everything prepared.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.